Of all the bands that played the Stork Club, none had a longer or happier association with the dance hall, and of course, the audiences that patronized it, than Johnny Downs. For 8.5 years, and occasionally thereafter, Johnny, the maestro of sophisticated swing, played the music that kept audiences coming back again and again. John, you told me yesterday that although your family were not originally musically inclined, your father was especially determined that your sisters and brothers should get some musical instruction. What influenced his thinking along this line?
Oh, very simply, Don. The fact that he grew up almost a neighbor to the Guy Lombardo's family. And he was around when old Mr. Lombardo was laying the whip to him to make him practice and all, and he was around, and when the boys would come home after gaining some success in Cleveland, Chicago with the big cars and everything, and my father thought that was the way to go. So all of us had to take music lessons, the whole family.
Mm-hmm. And where did you go for this instruction?
Well, I went to St. Mary's School in London as a child, and when I got to be probably 6 or 7, I got started at the music school at Sacred Heart Convent, which was operated by the nuns, and who did a very, very good job of training young people professionally to play musical instruments. And my choice was a violin at that point.
Was this your choice or your father's choice?
Probably I lied. My father's. Yeah.
So you stuck with the violin for how long?
Oh, about 5 years.
And then what happened?
Well, I got interested in the bands that one can get every night on local radio, fed from the big networks in the United States and also CBC. They went west and brought in the Mark Kennys and so on from places beautiful, you know. And so the violin sort of faded, and I got myself a saxophone and clarinet and started to make a little more noise and play modern music.
I believe you played professionally first in 1938. How old were you then, John?
Well, I was 16, and if you had heard me then, I don't know, you changed the word professionally. I think you'd find a lesser word, but I got started.
Did you play in any other band before you formed your own band?
Oh, sure. I would say the local band that meant the most to me was led by a fellow by the name of Bill Dennis. Bill's pretty well known around these parts. He always had a cottage at Port Stanley and so on. And he was a pretty good musician, and the band actually got some jobs, you know. The other bands I played with were mainly rehearsal bands that never really got serious.
Now, you were in high school at this time, and in the summer months you were able to get pretty steady work at playing in the dance halls around the province, and in 1939 you played Kincardine Beach Pavilion. And how much did you make out of that? How much did
the whole band, me, the guys? I'll break it down for you. We got basic $25 a week. That was for the band.
The whole band.
So that meant about $2.50 a week for the boys, and I think mine ran around $4 and a bit for music. Do you have any more embarrassing questions? And that's about what we were worth.
Obviously, you were able to survive on this.
Oh, yes, in those days, sure. All 8 of us rented a cottage together. We had to rehearse every morning at 10 o'clock. It wasn't really a contract, it was just a letter, but old Tony Campbell, the operator of the Kincardine Beach Pavilion, insisted that we practice for 1 hour at 10 o'clock, and if we weren't there, he'd come and get us. Oh, yes, I forgot to mention, we got, whenever the place went over $100 a night, we got 5% of it, and that happened 3 nights all summer long.
Well, you obviously weren't going to reach the Lombardo Plateau.
Not quite.
Overnight. Well, in 1940, the war was in full swing, and at this time you were playing the Seacliff in Leamington, is that right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then 41, you went to Peterborough to Rise Pavilion,
Mm-hmm.
and in the middle of the summer you got a chance to go to Midland and play up there.
And we took it.
And you were, for a while, commuting between Peterborough and Midland midweek.
Yeah.
How did you do that? How could the whole band move that far?
Well, not only that, but in Peterborough, there on the Otonabee River, I think it was called, we were off Sunday and Monday, and Thursday, that was part of our contract. We had to be taken down by the owner of the Rise Pavilion, Herb Payne, to the Gananoque Canoe Club on the St. Lawrence River. So we played there every Thursday night, packed them all up again, back to Rise Pavilion the next night. And then a fellow by the name of Charlie Parker, who's now the mayor, I believe, of Midland, Ontario, he called wondering if we could come up and play a Monday night date. So we put our instruments in our 1928, I think, a Chrysler, yeah, and a Model A Ford car. And all
Two
the
cars.
Oh, 2 cars is plenty.
And all the instruments.
Tie the bass on top, and the drums, yeah, on the other car.
You don't have a picture of that, do you?
No. Fortunately, no.
Gosh, that seems like an awful lot of work to do all that for $2. Yeah. Well, in 1942, you landed the contract for Springbank Pavilion in London.
Mm-hmm.
And by this time, you were going to Western. And some of your band members decided to rent a cottage at Port Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
And although you had been to Port Stanley maybe once or twice in the summer before, this was your real time at Port Stanley.
Right.
And it was here that you met Dorothy Birchall, who became eventually Mrs. Johnny Downs. Is that right?
That is absolutely right.
You obviously had a good time at Port Stanley.
And how? Yes, yes. And I'm still having a good time.
Yeah,
Dorothy,
we're back down here, and you're just a real great citizen of Port Stanley. I know you are, John. In 1943, you had contracted with the James family of Hamilton, who had built a dance hall copied after Wonderland in London. They call it Wonder Grove Gardens. Tell me a bit about that gig.
Well, they were really in the roaring years of the big bands, not that we were a big band, but business was great, especially in Hamilton Town. They were doing an awful lot of heavy industry war work, you know. So there were lots of big burly guys there looking for cherching la femme, and so many a night they would just simply have to close the gates and not let any more people in. It was a gold mine.
Your clientele was a working class.
Yep.
People.
Yeah. And the funny thing about it was that just before we had arrived there, we couldn't start playing until university broke out, because most of the guys in the band were at Western. And so we managed to get started about the 1st of May, but earlier on, you know, they always got musicians playing in their overcoats as soon as they would when the snow disappeared at those places. And that was a real lovely outdoor terrazzo floor and Spanish design type of place. And they had quite a rhubarb one night there. And the place was actually operated by an elderly lady by the name of Mrs. James. She owned it. Her husband had passed away, and her oldest daughter and a younger daughter. And they found that the best way to control the fervor of the guys who wanted to push and shove and pop somebody on the nose if he danced with his girl was to use lady hostesses, you know.
Instead of male bouncers.
Male bouncers, right. And it really worked. It never saw a bit of trouble. All the summer we played there, and boy, they processed lots of dancers. Yeah.
Where did you stay while you were in Hamilton?
Oh, well, once again, we were all pals, you know, and young, and all of us single at that time. And we'd always rent a cottage on the lake or river or whatever. And so adjacent to Hamilton on the west was a place called Cherry Beach. And we found this great big old cottage, and that's where we slept and ate.
You didn't enjoy your time at with these early years in the band, did you?
No, not at all. No way.
Well, 1943, we were right into the war, and it was your last season,
Yeah.
and you joined up and went into the Navy. Now, you were there until after VE Day. Did you have any connections with the music world at all during that time?
When I was in the Navy?
Yes.
Well, I took a saxophone and a clarinet with me, and wherever we would tie up at anchor, if there was a dance hall, I'd walk in with my horn and ask if I could sit in, and musicians were always friendly. And so I managed to keep in shape a bit.
That's good. Now, you made a statement to me yesterday while we were preparing for this interview, and it was rather surprising to me. You told me that you, and of course a lot of other servicemen, they thought that there would be a depression when you came out of the service after the war, and that you wouldn't have a job to go to. I'd never heard that before.
Mm-hmm. After the shenanigans that went on in Halifax, right after VE days, it lasted about a week of lots of fun and games, and the pubs were all wide open, going strong. The next thing that quite obviously happened aboard our ship, and I'm sure it was the same with a lot of them, the fun and games around Halifax and St. John, New Brunswick, where I happened to be at that time in dry dock, they were really something for a week, A lot of guys, I don't think, slept or quit drinking, And
you had nothing to do with that.
Oh, no. I surveyed it from a distance. And so when that all calmed down and leveled back out and normality took over, the next thing that became quite obvious, there were a fair number of furrowed brows around, and I found officers who never particularly got in any kind of a friendly conversation before. They would come out on the deck and lean over the rail and talk to you about what are you going to do for a living after we get out of this thing, back to the depression or what? And the guys always complained about meals in the service, and I don't think the Navy was any different than any of the others. Then they started to admit, gosh, we've really done well for living. Never had this type of food where I came from before, So that seemed to be the mood more so than when are we going to get out of this thing,
Okay, now the war's over, and you had already graduated from the business administration course at Western, and you had planned to enter the chartered accountants course.
What I was
when
going
you
to
came
do.
out.
Yeah.
But that's not exactly what did happen.
No.
What happened?
I married Dorothy.
Well, before you married Dorothy, what did you do when you first came out? You got a call from Grand Bank?
Oh, you mean how I got out of the Navy? So, yeah. Well, a lot of fellows had been in the Navy a lot longer than me, especially aboard the ship. I wasn't the saltiest one by far aboard it, And it took most of them a fair amount of time to be demobilized and so on. But not John Brown's, and it wasn't my own making. One day, a telegram came aboard for the captain. His name was Fraser. He never showed it to me. All he did was read it to me. And it was a telegram from Eric McElroy, who owned and operated the Lakeview Casino up at Grand Bend. And it wasn't quite as big a ballroom as the Stork Club at Port Stanley, but it was a good one. And Grand Bend was one fine resort and still is. And he just made it sound as if the world was going to stop in Grand Bend if he didn't get me to go up there. He made it sound like, we had to have somebody to take over the band and get the show on the road and everything like this. And I was out of the Navy thanks to Eric's little white lies, because all I did was go up there and filled in for the second tenor saxophone, who had got upset and gone back to Toronto one day. So I was out of the Navy in a civvy.
And you had a job.
And almost married.
And you did get married that October.
Right.
Which will be 50 years next October.
Yes.
That's a long time for one woman to put up with.
I never thought you were a mathematician, or I would have never came on this program.
Now, after the war, you certainly had intentions of, again, forming your band, your own band.
Yeah.
But that just didn't happen overnight.
No.
And it took 2 or 3 years to accomplish this. But once you did establish your band, it didn't break up until 1984, 35 years later.
Right.
That's a long time for...
Yeah, went by pretty quickly.
It did, eh? Okay, so I believe in the late 40s you got a regular spot at Port Stanley.
Mm-hmm.
In the ballroom in Port Stanley.
Yeah.
I should here explain that the ballroom in Port Stanley was first called the LMPS Pavilion. It was then called the Port Stanley Pavilion, and in the 1950s it became the Stork Club. We usually refer to it as the Stork Club, even when we're talking about it being built today. So that's probably what we'll call it from now on. Who ran the Stork Club when you first started to play there?
A lawyer from Hamilton by the name of Albert Mark. He had the concession. He took it over from whom, I don't know. But anyway, he had an 11-year contract or concession to run that part of Port Stanley, starting in the late 40s.
Had you aspired to play Port Stanley for some time?
Well, I had always wanted to, because maybe that would be my hopping off spot, just like it was Guy Lombardo's hopping off spot.
Oh, you had higher ambitions.
Oh, yes, yes.
But really, when you did get Port Stanley, that was rather a coup, was it?
Yes,
No?
yeah. More than satisfactory.
Yeah.
That was a good step.
Johnny, what did the big bands think of the Stork Club?
Oh, to a T, they all, if they had anything to say, and they usually did, they really admired it, especially the acoustics, the size, and everything about it. Oh, I remember Les Brown telling me, he said, what a surprise the first time he came to town. And, you know, he always backed Bob Hope. He was the Bob Hope's permanent band on all his USO tours and all of Bob Hope's shows. The Les Brown Band was the band. And he said, you know, home for us in Hollywood, Los Angeles, is the Palladium. And he said, it's a way smaller than this place. It can't hold a candle to it. And, you know, the Palladium was one of the things you hoped to get on the radio at night, because they just had a string of big bands there. And Les Brown seemed to be there more often than anything else. You couldn't roam too far because of the Bob Hope show.
Mm-hmm. You've been often compared to Les Brown and his band of renown.
Brown,
you must have. You must have. I guess. you must have admired him yourself quite a bit.
Oh yeah,
Les Brown.
Yeah, sure. Well, we admired his style, and to tell the truth, we try to play like the Les Brown band. You know, so you might say we were a poor man's Les Brown band.
Now, you were the house band through most, if not all, of the 1950s after Lloyd Gurr and Ted Gogoff took over. This was a decade that certainly saw a long parade of big bands in the Stork Club. Mm-hmm. And tell us about some of those bands that...
Oh, you provided me a list. Good boy, because with my memory... Yeah, well, we were there for all of them. You know, the Glenn Miller, the Tom Dorsey, the Louis Armstrong. I remember when I arrived that night, Louis was sitting behind the bandstand. There was a wee, narrow walkway, you know. Mm-hmm. And he had a briefcase, but it was a portable medicine chest he had. And he had every kind of balm, salve, balm, as B-A-L-M. Yeah. He had that plastered all over his lips and everything like that.
I remember that, too.
And, you know, right at that time, I had read 3 or 4 times that Louis was writing his autobiography, you know, because he was really a well-known character. You couldn't help but like Louis, you know. And so when I sort of walked by, I said, Louis, I'm Johnny Downs. We're going to play the stand-in parts for you while you guys rest tonight. How are you? Oh, I'm fine, he said. And I said, congratulations. I hear you've been writing your autobiography. Well, he thought for a minute. He said, well, that's what I hear. He wasn't writing it. Somebody was writing it for him. I don't think writing was his forte, to tell the truth.
Louis Armstrong, as I remember, as you say, he was very accessible. And when he took his break, he didn't always run off into a room.
No.
He would stay right there and talk with the people.
Oh, yeah.
He was very accessible.
Yeah. Talk with the fellows in the band while they were supposed to be playing or anything, you know.
Remember the stack of white handkerchiefs he always had with him?
Oh, good.
He went through
Always.
all those on the set. He'd just perspire something terrible.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right.
But he had that certain something.
He certainly did. Now, when these big bands and these groups would come, what role did the house band play? What did you do? What was your...
Well, it would depend on whether it was more of an act or more of a dance band. And so if it was an act, then we would usually play for about an hour at 9 o'clock and bring on the act. Acts like the Four Aces and the Crew Cuts and stars from CBC radio. They were the days of the musical shows on CBC, you know. So the Joan Fairfaxes and the like, they all came to the Star Club, and they would do half, three-quarters of an hour show at about 10 o'clock usually, and another one at midnight. And throughout, we'd rehearse with them first, of course, either in the afternoon or the early evening. And then throughout the other times, we play straight dance music for the people to unwind.
I know on some occasions, and I can't recall the exact band that was there, but I remember that they wanted you to play far more than they did the guest.
Yeah.
Big band.
We won't mention names, eh?
No, we won't mention any names.
All right.
But that's a fact. That's certainly a fact.
Yeah. Well, a good part of that reason, though, Don, was that they had been poorly chosen for the Stork Club.
It was too big a place.
People came to the Stork Club to dance and to socialize, and it was a fun place. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a theater or an auditorium. And, you know, bands like Stan Kenton and Maynard Ferguson, that was an unhappy night. Just fantastic musicians in the band, but they were jazz musicians, the type that record and the type that you go and sit down in an auditorium and listen and clap after the number. Don't talk all the way through it and dance. You know, yeah. And that was really the reason.
You knew what the people of Port Stanley and the people that came to Port Stanley wanted.
Yeah.
Because you had been there and you knew exactly the songs even.
Sure.
That they wanted to hear, whether you liked those songs.
And we played there so long, and so many
songs.
people came back and back and back for their anniversary, their birthday, or their 2 or 3 weeks in Port Stanley in the summertime, you know. So as soon as we'd see them, we'd say, well, here comes so-and-so who wants such and such, and we'd play it. Yeah.
Would you say that the highlight of your career as a musician was playing the Stork Club?
We never found a better place. We played the Royal York and all of them on individual engagements, because that's what we spent. You know, when we played at the Stork Club, it was mainly 1 or 2 nights a week all the time, because the days of operating 7 nights a week were no longer there by the late 40s, you know. But they could sure pack them in on the weekends or for special events, you know. So we mainly played colleges and for service clubs and final graduation balls and the like, you know. But there wasn't any better place to play that I ever found in Canada.
Looking back the Stork Club was just something that
was
is
for
indescribable.
musicians. Yeah.
It was for not only musicians, it was for all the people.
Yeah.
We just
Sure
had
was.
a beautiful spot that we just can't.
Yeah. And it got better still when they put tables and chairs in and made it cabaret style dancing, you know.
Yes. What did they do before they had cabaret, before they put the tables?
Well, the same thing as they did in every dance hall we played. All the Masonic temples were used for dance halls, you know, the big ones in Toronto. And I know you're a good Mason. And
I know you're not.
Yeah. And so at those dances, there was, in the Star Club, if you'll remember, maybe they were taken out by the time you were born, but it was rung all the way around, so that figure the footage. There were long benches.
Yes,
Wooden benches,
Wooden
yeah.
benches, yes, I remember.
So you go and ask a girl for a dance if you didn't bring a girl, and so a lot of people went singly to dances, and especially during the war years, you know, lots of girls went there singly to meet the boys from CRAFT,
TTS
in St. Thomas,
Yeah.
and so you either walked around and around the dance floor, outside the dance floor,
Promenade.
looking for somebody to dance with or somebody to meet, or you sat the bench for a while and you danced for a while.
John, did they have jitney dancing in your day?
Oh yes, they did at the Stork Club. They had
When you played at the Stork
rope
Club?
boys and all, and they did
Just
it
tell us
at
a bit about-
Springbank and at Rise Pavilion.
Tell us a bit, what is jitney dancing?
Well, there would be either a very small admission price or no admission price. And then the dance floor itself was on the interior of the whole building. And there would be a promenade around the outside of the dance floor. And the dance floor would have railings around it, about, yay high, waist high. And you could lean on the railings and watch the dancers, talk to them as they went by or whatever, And because they were sociable places. And then every so many feet there would be an opening and there would be a rope strung across, hooked at either end to the stable railing, and there would be a rope boy at every one. And the band had to do so many sets, usually an hour, And people would buy themselves whatever number of tickets they could afford at the start of the night, whether they had 50 cents or a buck to buy them with, because they were usually about 5 cents or a dime, depending on the years,
Yeah.
And so when the band quit playing one set, there'd be a pause of about 30 seconds while the rope boys would dash out on the floor and rope you all in. And as soon as he had you all hooked, you weren't off the floor yet, you were stumbling off. Then the band would start again the next set, and you'd go through the wickets where the boys would take the keys. And that was called jitney dancing.
And you as a band leader had to play a certain number of songs.
Yeah.
And you didn't have much time in between.
Yeah.
16.
Especially if you were playing at Rise Pavilion in Peterborough. And the manager was 3.5 feet across his shoulders and built like Mike Tyson. And he was threatening all the time, looking like this.
Yeah, you didn't have any time to really think about it. John, do you remember your the last time you played the Stork Club?
I don't know whether I do or not. Whether it was a New Year's Eve. You maybe know more so than I do.
No, I don't. I don't know when it was.
Our last date in the Stork Club.
Obviously, you didn't realize it was
even
going
I
to
don't know
be.
whether there was such a thing as a last date, because once again, we would, the band finished in 1984, and I would imagine we were through at the Stork Club maybe 10 years or...
Yeah, I think 1974 maybe was the last time you played.
But see, we would still come in and play individual dates. The frost hop from Western was always a big one. There'd be about 1,500 at that, you know, and they'd all come down by car, the LMPS. And that was right after orientation at Western every fall, you know. So there was that and other balls, charitable events and money-making events for good causes, you know. So we would be at the Star Club, in and out.
Yeah. Johnny Downs, you have lived through a great musical period. You, from the 1930s for nearly half a century, helped in a very big way to make some of the musical history of this area. You were, for longer than any other musician, associated with the Port Stanley Star Club. You made many memories during your playing career, and you've shared with us today many of those precious times. John, it has been a particular privilege for me to have had the opportunity to talk with you and share some of these special moments with you. And thank you again.
You're welcome, and for me too. Pleasure.
Thanks, John.